Hi everyone, I'm Serena. You might remember me from my Rathleisure talk the last time we had one of these events. I'm going to be talking to you today about some really amazing plants called nepenthes, more commonly known as pitcher plants, sometimes called monkey pots. Puriuk Kera, I think in Malay, is the Malay name for them. Have you seen a pitcher plant before? So you might recognize pitcher plants from some traditional foods like lemang. You might recognize some of them from walks around, you're like on Bukit Padang or walks around the local area. We have a lot of the common pitcher plant here. It's called Nepenthes gracilis. And you might recognize pitcher plants from some old books or movies about a man eating pitcher plants, but don't worry, they can't hurt you. They don't eat humans. So what are pitcher plants exactly, and are they really carnivorous? So pitcher plants belong to the Nepenthes family. They are plants very similar to others in that they have leaves, they have flowers, they have seeds. They photosynthesize, meaning that they transform sunlight into energy. But they do also have a couple of very special adaptations, one of which is that some of the tips of their leaves form into these pitchers rather, and they do actually use them to catch insects to supplement their nutrient uptake, because a lot of pitcher plants live in areas where there's very poor soil, there's not a lot of nutrient in the soil, and they have very shallow root systems, meaning that they can't go deep to absorb what they need, so they have to supplement their diet. So yes, they really are carnivorous. So what makes a carnivore? And are they the same as parasitic plants? Anyone want to take a guess on this? Are carnivorous plants the same as parasitic plants? So carnivorous plants actually digest things like insects and even small mammals, and they absorb nutrients from that. Whereas parasitic plants like Rathleisure and mistletoe are not carnivores, they don't catch insects, but they get all the nutrients they need from their host plant, the plant that they grow on. So, pitcher plants 101, the taxonomy, which means the kind of anatomy of the plant. So, as I was saying before, pitcher plants have evolved this special leaf tip, and here you can actually see that the pitcher is a adapted tip of the leaf, so it grows out of the leaf. I can actually pass one round, you can have a closer look. So you can see here, just pass it round, but the pitcher actually does grow right out of the leaf tip. So lots of people have asked me if I know what species that pitcher plant is. Unfortunately, I don't. It was a gift from a friend who breeds them. I'm not sure that even he's entirely sure what that is, but it serves to illustrate the taxonomy. Anyway, so pitcher plants inside are divided into two areas, the waxy zone and the glandular zone. So the waxy zone is covered in very thin, sort of little waxy scales, and the purpose is that insects who land on the peristome, which is up here, and is also quite slippery and waxy, especially in wet weather, they slip, they fall into the pitcher plant, they can't climb back out because of the waxy scales. So they fall into the glandular zone, which is filled with a mixture of rainwater usually, and also digestive acid that the pitcher plant produces itself, which is really amazing. It produces them from these little glands there. And then in the glandular zone, the prey, the insects usually, is digested, and then the nutrients are absorbed back into the plant through the glands as well. So, diverse habitats. Pitcher plants can live all over, but a commonality, so this is Mount Kinabalu here, this is Mesilao. They can live in all over, peat swamps, montane forest, but a commonality is that in where they live is that it will usually have very poor soil. And that is the whole reason why pitcher plants have evolved to be carnivores. As I mentioned earlier, it's because they have shallow roots, they can't go deep for nutrients, they can't absorb especially the nitrogen that they need from the soil itself, because poor soil is usually nitrogen poor specifically, so they have to find a way of supplementing their nutrient intake. So a good place to see pitcher plants like this is actually Mesilao and Kinabalu, especially the mountain trail and at Gunung Alab too, where if we go to see the Rafflesia, hopefully you'll see some pitcher plants there as well. So pitcher plants of Sabah. Sabah has a great wealth of pitcher plants. We have 22 species out of Borneo's 39 species, and some of them are only found, like Nepenthes raja, are only found in Sabah in very specific places like Mount Kinabalu. So some other well-known and beautiful pitcher plant are Rafflesiana, which is famous for this ruffle around its pitcher, and it's named after Sir Stamford Raffles. And we also have, I think this is Villosa, and I'll show you further on we have one called Loei, which is very interesting and we'll get to shortly. So record holders, and Sabah's arguably most famous Nepenthes is Nepenthes Raja, named after Raja Brooke of Sarawak. So it's one of the largest pitcher plants in the world. I think it's only beaten by Atum boreai in the Philippines, and it can grow 41 centimeters high and up to 20 centimeters wide, and it can hold an astonishing 3.5 liters of fluid in one of these pitchers. 2.5 liters of that can be, up to 2.5 liters of that can be digestive fluid that the plant makes itself, which is pretty astounding when you think about it. Another interesting fact about Raja is that it's one of only 3 Nepenthes in the world that have actually been recorded trapping mammalian prey. So Raja has been recorded, we found like mice and other things in there. The pitchers don't just trap things either. They play host to 2 types of mosquito larvae, which can only live inside the Nepenthes Raja pitcher. Usually when the rainwater has diluted the digestive acid a little bit, we get quite high concentrations of mosquitoes in a lot of pitchers. And interestingly, some of them have evolved to have a sort of symbiotic relationship with the pitcher plants, and they can only live in very specific pitchers. And those are called Nepenthe bionots. Pitcher plants and symbiosis. So I said that we would get to Loei. I'll show you a better picture a bit later, but this is Nepenthes Loei. It has very wide rim at the top and then a very narrow like neck, and then it sort of bulbs out at the bottom. And Nepenthes Loei in particular, although you see this tree shrew on Nepenthes Raja pitcher, it's actually Nepenthes Loei with which tree shrews have the most interesting relationship. They've evolved a mutually beneficial relationship whereby the aerial pitchers, in particular of Loei, produce huge amounts of nectar and this waxy exodus, which the tree shrews eat. Now, the aerial pitchers of Loei have also evolved to essentially be the perfect size to be a tree shrew toilet. And so while the tree shrews are eating this exodus here, this waxy stuff, and sucking up the nectar, if they feel like they have to, go tandas, then it falls into the pitcher plant, and it's an excellent source of nitrogen. And it actually feeds the pitcher plant. And the Nepenthes Loei have also evolved this peristem on the aerial pitchers that's not as slippery as their ground pitchers. So most pitcher plants will have aerial and ground pitchers, and it's interesting that Loei has evolved their aerial pitchers to be almost exclusively for tree shrew use, while the ground pitchers are still slippery and everything to catch insects. So yeah, and some other interesting symbiotic relationships that pitcher plants have. Some are with bats. So bats have been observed roosting in some pitcher plants, and it's been hypothesized that some pitchers have evolved wider upper areas of the pitcher, of the waxy zone, in order to provide a better echo, so that bats can actually find the pitchers, which is also really amazing. And again, similar to tree shrews, the bats poo inside the pitcher and it gives them nitrogen. And then this is one of my favorite pitcher plants. This is Nepenthes bicalcurata. It's also called the fanged pitcher or the vampire pitcher. due to these two little fangs here. You can see them closer up here. And it has evolved a really interesting relationship with one very specific type of ant called Camponotus schmidtsii. And basically, it provides the ants with a home. They usually build a home in the little curl of the leaf tendril there, and in return, and provides them with nectar. And in return, the ants not only prevent the pitcher from being eaten by weevils, they'll attack the weevils if they get onto the plant, but they also act as garbage collectors. They will actually go down into the pitcher's fluid. It's much more dilute in this particular species than in a lot of other pitchers, and they will fish out the bigger pieces of prey and break them down so that it's easier for the plant to digest and that the plant doesn't run such a risk of rotting. So really quite amazing. Next, please. Okay, pollination and reproduction. Common misconception that Nepenthes are night blooming and that they are pollinated by bats. This is not true. There's no evidence to show that bats pollinate pitcher plants. They have a symbiotic relationship in the sense that they will roost in them. This is not a picture of pollination. I often see it on the internet being shown as saying that bats pollinate pitcher plants. They don't. Pitcher plants are mostly pollinated by insects. In fact, almost exclusively by insects. Butterflies, flies, some ants, and here you can see the flowers of the pitcher plant. So this is not the flower. As we mentioned before, that is a modified leaf tip. This is the flower, and it grows up from the top of the leaves like this in spike. You can see some close-up. You can see the pollen there and the petals. And these are seed pods, this one. So Nepenthes do actually make seeds. It is possible to harvest the seeds and grow them. It's just quite difficult unless it's under very specific circumstances. So why did we develop our current love and fascination with pitcher plants? It's mainly thanks to the Victorian, who had a love of everything Gothic, and they had a taste for the dark and the macabre. And you would have these Victorian explorers going off and bringing back these man-eating plants that people would keep in very fancy terrariums like this Venus flytrap, Sarracenia, all sorts of carnivorous plants. And you'd hear stories like the man-eating tree of Madagascar, where reportedly a Victorian explorer made up a whole thing about how the Madagascan tribes fed people to this giant pitcher plant. Of course, it's not true. But that's how the legend kind of grew, and people got obsessed with these plants. They entered popular culture. People wrote famous poems about them, and we've really never finished the love affair with them. It keeps going on. So, Nepenthes hybrids and pitchers in pot. A lot of people ask me when we're talking about pitcher plants if it's possible to grow Nepenthes at home. As you saw, it is. They're available from a lot of nurseries now. You can buy a pitcher plant from a grower, a cultivator online. My only request, if you decide to adopt a Nepenthes for yourself, is that you make sure it wasn't stolen from the wild, but we'll have more on that later. So, a lot of Nepenthes, including Nepenthes raja, are very good at hybridizing in the wild. It's a survival strategy. If you hybridize and create new species, you're lessening your risk of having entire populations wiped out by disease that target a particular plant, and etc., etc. So this is Trismadii. As you can see, it is an incredibly beautiful pitcher, and Trismadii is I always get this confused, so I just have to double check this for myself as well. So here you can see Trismadii again, and that is a natural hybrid between Nepenthes lowii, which we talked about with the tree shrews. This is Nepenthes lowii, you can see here, and Nepenthes macrophylla, which is this one here. And when they crossbreed, we get Trismadii, and this is Kinabaluensis, which is a hybrid between Raja, which we also talked about, and Nepenthes villosa, and you get these very beautiful pitchers. Lots of growers deliberately make hybrids for aesthetic reasons. If you do a Google search, you will find tons and tons, more than I could possibly name, people keep creating new ones. Next, please. Okay, conservation. So, out of 180-ish species of pitcher plant, around 45 to 50 are critically endangered. This is primarily due to poaching and habitat loss. So plant poaching for rare and exotic plants like this is a huge problem. People will go into the wild, they'll strip entire areas of the plants, and it's not just the plants that suffer, it's the entire ecosystem. Because as we saw, these plants have a lot of very intricate symbiotic relationships with other animals, and it disrupts the whole forest where they came from. What can people do about it? Well, the big thing is don't participate in plant poaching and protect your rainforests. So if you're buying plants, try to buy from reputable nurseries, reputable growers. If you ask someone where they got the plant and they say dari hutan, don't touch it. Yeah, we protect the rainforest, fight against big deforestation plans, and support reforestation projects like the ones that One Stop Borneo Wildlife do. And there's also conservation efforts going on in nurseries whereby scientists are growing endangered nepenthes using tissue culture, which is a new and expanding field. Tissue culture is when you take a small sample of tissue from the plant and that can still survive, and you try and grow it. You can also take stem cultures, and they're always expanding the ways in which they can grow nepenthes. This is another look at the bicalculata, the fanged nepenthes that I was talking about just now. Next, please. And yeah, so if we all come together, we will hopefully have nepenthes like this one at Gunung Alab around for all of us to enjoy for a long time to come. And I hope you all found that interesting. Thank you.
So, any questions now to Serena?
What's the average lifespan of pitcher?
So, the nepenthes plants themselves, in the wild, we estimate they could live up to 50 years if, nothing happens to them. For the pitchers, the individual pitchers themselves, they usually last from 2 to 6 months.
Do you have a scent or anything, or is it basically insects are going in mostly for water, for the collection?
The insects are attracted by the nectar they produce, not the scent. No, they're not like Rafflesia. They don't have any odor like that. Yeah.
And in the areas where these go, do you find other insect-eating plants or carnivorous plants like the flytrap and find in the same areas as the nepenthes?
We don't have fly traps here or Sarracenia. We do have another carnivorous plant called a sundew or Drosera, and you do sometimes find Drosera and nepenthes in the same areas. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a very great presentation.
Thank you.
I like it, especially the best, the rodents. I don't know about that. So I think a few years back, they found this microhyla. It's a very tiny frog, which found in nepenthes
Ampularia, yeah, in the peat swamp.
A few years back, and the frog used to be like the tiniest frog in the world. Now it's the third smallest in the world. So I was wondering, in large species like Nepenthes raja, do they ever found frog living inside microhyla or any type of microhyla?
Yeah, they have found frogs living in Nepenthes raja. What they haven't found is evidence that specific species of frogs have the same kind of symbiotic relationship with raja that microhyla has with Ampularia.
So they found the frog, like it's not totally human that the frog used to be a man.
It's kind of like maybe like a one-off situation rather than a symbiotic relationship. Great question. I've had other reports of that happening. I don't believe that there's actually been any scientific study that has proven that nepenthes can live without a base plant or a root system, although there has been lots of anecdotal evidence, but I tend to go with what's been proven by science, and in that case I have to say that we have no proof of that yet.
Any more questions? If no, you guys can talk to Serena after this. Thank you so much, Serena.